Hey guys, today we will be talking about the muscles and the tendons of the fourth layer of the sole of the foot. That is the fourth muscular layer. So in this layer we basically have four dorsal interossei and we have three plantar interossei. Now these both are basically part of the fourth layer and so are visible as such. In addition, we have two tendons, the tibialis posterior, this is the medial side. So it's coming from over here, from the flexor retinaculum, underneath the flexor retinaculum. And over here we have the peroneus longus coming from underneath the peroneal retinaculum, and we will be talking about these two. But let's start with these. Right, so going from medial to lateral, if we see the labeling, we see that this basically is where we are being pointed towards the first dorsal interosseous muscle, right? And the muscular belly can be seen in between the gap of the first and the second metatarsal. So in between the gap of the first metatarsal and the second metatarsal, we can see the muscular belly of the first dorsal interosseous muscle. And if I zoom in, you can see from the direction of the fibers that the first dorsal interosseous muscle is a bipinnate muscle, and this holds true for the remaining three dorsal interossei. So the location of the muscular belly is clear. The fact that it is bipinnate is clear. Now what about the origin and the insertion? The origin of the dorsal interosseous is from the adjacent sides of the metatarsals, and in this case from the adjacent, that is the sides that face each other. The adjacent sides of the first and the second metatarsals give origin to the first dorsal interosseous. And because the muscular belly is kind of limited in between the gap, right, of the metatarsals, so it's easy to remember that the insertion will be on the proximal phalanxes, the base of the proximal phalanxes. And by base we mean the starting point. You can see this over here in green. So the dorsal interosseous muscle finds its insertion on the medial side of the base of the proximal phalanx of the second toe. 2 points to remember: it's not the first toe and it's the medial side and not the lateral. The fact that the insertion of the first on the medial side is a bit of a unique point, as I will come to explain. Now for the second, as mentioned previously, the second is also a bipinnate. But in this view, in addition to the dorsal interosseous, the second dorsal interosseous, we can also see the first plantar interosseous muscle. Let me zoom in. So over here we can see in this part, we can see, and these are basically showing the bipinnancy of the second dorsal interosseous, whereas this is the plantar interosseous. Now one thing to note is that while this is obviously bipinnate, even over here they have had a rudimentary attempt to show the bipinnancy. The plantar interosseous is wholly unipinnate, but that is not as such important. Now you must not be mistaken as to the origin. The origin of the second dorsal interosseous is again from the adjacent sides of the metatarsal bones, in this case the second and the third metatarsal bones, right? And the insertion is again on the base of a proximal phalanx, but again it's on the base of the proximal phalanx of the second toe once more. But whereas the first had its insertion on the medial side, the second will have its insertion on the lateral side, and the lateral sided insertion holds true for the remaining dorsal interossei. In addition to this, part of the insertion for all of these is also on the dorsal distal expansion. The third and the fourth are similarly bipinnate, fill the gap between adjacent metatarsals, have their origin from the sides of the adjacent metatarsals, and occupy the lateral side of the metatarsals. In this case, It was like this over here, second will be over here, third will be like this, fourth will be like this. Now if it move towards the plantae introsci, it's a bit different. We have just 3 plantae introsci. They're basically unipinnate, and they have a bit of a different origin. So they're found in between the second, the third, and the fourth intermetatarsal space, and they have their origin from the inferior surfaces of the third, the fourth, and the fifth metatarsals respectively. Right? When we talked about the insertion of the introsci, we had that on the second, the third, the fourth, and also on the fifth. Over here it will be a bit different because the first had it over here, the second had it over here, the third had it over here, and the fourth had it over here. No insertion of the dorsal introsci was on the lateral or even the medial side of the fifth. Again, that is something I did not mention. So for the plantae, the origin is from the inferior surfaces of the third, the fourth, and the fifth metatarsals, and not from the adjacent sides, but from the inferior surfaces of just the third, the fourth, and the fifth metatarsals. And the insertion is on the medial sides of the third, the fourth, and the fifth bases of the proximal phalanges. Now, if we talk about the function of the dorsal introsci, we still have the same mnemonic applicable. So the dorsal have abduction of the toes as the function, the plantar has adduction. And in addition, both of them flex the metatarsophalangeal joint and extend the interphalangeal joints. Right? In addition, we have, and both of these, they are supplied by the lateral plantar nerve. You can see over here the deep branch of the lateral plantar nerve. It would be deep because this is basically the fourth, and we have one over here, second over here, third over here, and the fourth over here. So that much is clear that all of these are being supplied by the deep plantar nerve. We can also see part of the plantar arch, which is interesting. The metatarsal arteries are also visible, and these are the ones that will be supplying the digits. The dorsalis pedis artery can be seen. Now we have two tendons, the tibialis posterior, and its vast extension has been shown by the splitting fibers to literally all of the tarsals. And we can also see the peroneus longus. This, my friends, is a long plantar ligament, and this is the short plantar ligament, and these are basically the intersegmental ties of the lateral plantar arch. We also have the plantar ligaments, and we also have the deep transverse ligaments visible over here. I'm hoping this was helpful. Now, the peroneus longus has a function in maintaining the transverse arch of the foot because of its having spread over the arch like this, and the tibialis posterior has also a function but not quite like this. It does have preserve the medial longitudinal arch. I'm hoping this was helpful. If it was, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment.